Bernie Goetz is a quirky loner who lived in New York City and always carried a firearm with him, who was obsessed with public safety. On December 22nd, 1984, he shot and seriously wounded 4 unarmed black teenagers, ran away, ultimately turned himself in, but was heralded as a sort of hero to many people. A surprise, maybe might be surprising amount of people in New York City and around the country saw him as the face of a public that just felt unsafe and uncared for by the government in New York City and around the country, that wasn't fixated on crime, and made him into almost an avenging vigilante. To many people, this individual became a hero. And, you know, you alluded to the Billy Joel point. It's not, I don't think necessarily that Billy Joel is the great chronicler of American events necessarily. However, if you look at that song, We Didn't Start the Fire, where you're talking about references to Ronald Reagan, the Ayatollah, Doris Day, Iran, Bridge on the River Kwai, whatever else, all of these major events in AIDS, crack, all these major events in the mid to late 20th century. What is it about Bernard Goetz that puts it in that pantheon of moments? And I think that the story tapped into a tremendous amount about public safety and race and crime and division and cities and politics and all of the things in one story that is almost receding into distant memory at this point, being about 40 years out. And so the story said and does so much more than just that 60 seconds of shooting would seem to represent. Well, the reality is they were 4 teenagers from the Bronx. They were heading downtown at the time to break open video game machines, actually. They had screwdrivers on them for the purposes of cracking open video game machines and taking the money out. One could actually make hundreds, if not thousands of dollars from a video game console, because there were just so many of them around New York, and they all had hundreds and hundreds of dollars of quarters in them. So that's where they were heading on down to do. Now, at one point, soon after Goetz got on the train, one of the young men either asked for $5, hey, can I have $5? Which is a perfectly plausible explanation given that they were heading downtown. I did this knowing what I was doing. So it's a knowing and voluntary confession. The defense consented, in effect, or didn't object to it being played, because they felt that the jury would see kinship with Goetz, that they would see in him some of themselves as people who regularly rode the subway, people who were frightened themselves, and ultimately that paid off. It's a remarkable bit of legal craft or counterintuitive approaches to the world. It's truly remarkable, only in that this man says, I wanted to commit murder to police with his faculties. He wasn't drunk, he wasn't high, he wasn't insane. He knew what he was saying. Or, according to Goetz, it was a mugging. Or an imminent mugging. It was, give me $5 right now. Now, Goetz is unequivocal to this day, and was with the police back then. This was a mugging. These guys wanted to mug me. I know a mugging. Even if they just had said nothing more than hello to me, I know this was a mugging. It's not clear. It's certainly not clear that it's a mugging. And even if maybe Troy Canty, who's the one who approached, intended to threaten Goetz, or he certainly didn't take any further future steps beyond that request or that demand, whatever it was. And so at that point, New York law allowed Goetz at that point to use deadly force if he sincerely believed that he was threatened. Now, the problem is that there's so much kicking around Bernard Goetz's brain about these young men, about the city, about crime, about safety, that he felt completely empowered to pull out his gun and open fire. And he did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, firing those 5 bullets in quite relatively rapid succession, including 2 of the young men, if not in the back, certainly in their sides as they were turning away. He's believed to have said to Daryl Caby, who is the last individual to get shot, and the one who ultimately ends up the most seriously injured. He ends up paralyzed from the mid-chest down, and then when in the hospital, went into a coma, respiratory arrest, and came out brain damaged, quite seriously injured. Well, it is believed that Goetz stood over him and said, you don't look so bad, here's another, and shot him a second time. There's some ambiguity as to whether he said it, whether he mumbled it, whether he just thought it. Goetz certainly admits to having made that statement. it was a world without Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and all of these things that the world relies on now to create massive stories and trending stories and so on. Just imagine that with only the benefit of the New York Post, the Daily News, the New York Times, and national newspapers, somehow this became a story that generated a ton of hysteria, not just in the city, but around the country, if not the world. Now, I will say the New York Post played a big role in driving public hysteria um, and buzz around the case. Rupert Murdoch had just purchased the Post and had shifted a lot of the coverage into, let's say, shock and awe reporting, frightening its readers, which led them to buy more papers, which made them be even more frightened and led them to buy more papers. And it was a continuing cycle. And so a lot of things really did contribute to the making of this hero. That didn't quite answer your question. I can't remember exactly
No,
what the
no, it,
question
it
was.
does. It all
Oh,
answers. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It turned him into, galvanized him into the sympathetic kind of vigilante hero. Tell us about the trial a little bit and the
Mm.
outcome of that trial.
So he goes on trial for attempted murder, attempted assault, reckless endangerment, and illegal gun possession. And he's ultimately only convicted of the illegal gun possession after all that. Now, the biggest gambit at the trial was that his defense attorneys allowed the jury to hear Bernard Goetz's 2 hour, I think 3 hours of confession, audio taped and videotaped confessions in New Hampshire. And there's no ambiguity here. He confesses to these crimes. He says, I wanted to murder them. He got sued for tens of millions of dollars. He lost a civil trial, clearly never intends to pay, and is evidently not going to. I think it's a $37 million settlement. And he just became an odd man about town. He ran for mayor and public advocate on a pro-vegetarian, pro-naps for municipal workers, anti-circumcision platform. Um, Vegetarian school meals. That was his platform, and was stunned that many of the people who supported him on the basis of gun rights and not the merits of his platform. So he's around there. A lot of marijuana advocacy. A lot of he apparently shows up a lot, both at veganism and vegetarian events, but also pro marijuana events, down to the point that, which I did not include this in the book, I couldn't find a place for it. He and Curtis Sliwa, the individual who ran for mayor in New York and is a big man about town and Republican public safety advocate, they run into each other a bunch at pro weed rallies. And so that's it. Another big one, and I talk about this in the book, Five Bullets. He took to saving squirrels. With Washington Square Park is a big park near his house, and he'll see squirrels and bring them into his apartment and sort of nurse them back to health. Had a pet chinchilla, just all of these things. He was arrested in 2013 for attempted marijuana distribution. He had said he was entrapped. The irony of ironies, said he was entrapped by a police officer. He wanted to give her the weed for free. She insisted on paying. He got the weed. He's ultimately apprehended for it. Now, the irony of ironies is that the charges got thrown out because of incompetence in the prosecutor's office, which is like the thing he's been talking about for his entire life, which is that the prosecutors just didn't bring the charges fast enough. So he's just been around, but it's quirky and odd is the charitable way to put it. He meanders a lot when you're speaking with him. It was just sort of bouncing around and all over the place. The striking thing that I found is the utter lack of self awareness or self reflection from him. Now, certainly, people who, whether it was acts of self defense or whether it was violent acts or just even we're human, we're fallible, all of us, there's always room for a little bit of self analysis of, okay, in that moment, this is what I felt. I was frightened, both objectively and subjectively, and I felt a need to open fire, comma. However, someone was tragically hurt as a result of it. Lives were upended. We shifted pretty much the lives of everybody on that train car. This was tragic. This was profound. None of that in the conversation. It's almost as if he believes he committed an act of public service in shooting these four young men. And almost with, it's not even a boastfulness. It's just a matter of factness about almost being glad about having done it, and absolute lack of any sort of remorse or sympathy for the people he shot, or anyone who might even question the appropriateness of his action. He just it's us against them. Everybody else is a them and not an us to him, and he just there's just no bending on that.